Welcome back. The St. Louis Blues. 6 weeks ago, we were talking about how, they may make the playoffs, they may not. Braden Shen probably leaves as a rental at the deadline. You want to get draft picks back, this kind of thing. And now, here we are all these weeks later, and St. Louis looks like a pretty good bet to make the playoffs. According to Money Puck, 92.7% chance. According to Hockey Reference, 94.3% chance to make the playoffs. So they're now ahead of Minnesota by a point. They look good. And here we are. A video about a 10-game winning streak by a team that I don't think people expected that 10-game winning streak from. There will be those who look at the 10 games that they've won and say, well, that doesn't count. Big deal. Look who they beat. As if 10-game winning streaks happen all the time, which they don't. I believe this is only the second 10-game winning streak we've had all season. The Jets had the first one, the Blues have the second one, and oddly enough, these teams might play each other in the first round of the playoffs, to which I say, bring it on if that is in fact the case. So, the winning streak started after a loss against Pittsburgh, a 5-3 loss March the 13th. Noteworthy here is that tomorrow they play Pittsburgh. So, if they lost against Pittsburgh, that would mean they won 10 in a row, and it's bookended by losses to Pittsburgh. So that absolutely could, sure. And people will say, well, he's done a video on it, so now he's jinxed them. Sure, that's it. So Minnesota was the start of the winning streak. In Minnesota, they won the game 5-1. They led 1-0 after the first, 3-1 after the second, and Kyrou had a hat trick. One thing about the Blues during this winning streak, they generally have not got behind. And scores haven't been crazy, but they've kept everything under control and in their favor. So then they came home. They played against the Anaheim Ducks. They won that game 7-2. They led 2-0 after the first and 5-1 after the second. So Kyrou had a hat trick in the game against Minnesota, and then he has 3 assists in the game against Anaheim. So Jordan Kyrou, a big part of how this winning streak gets started. And he's prominent again when they go to Nashville and they win that game 4-1. They led 2-0 after the first. They led 3-1 after the second. Kyrou had 2 goals in that game. Then they come back home. They play against Vancouver. They won that one in overtime, 4-3. Besser tied that one heroically late, but St. Louis does get the win. It was a 1-0 lead for St. Louis after 1 and a 1-0 lead for them after 2 as well. So the score did not change. And then in the third period, we got some scoring. Broberg had the winner at 3:42. Broberg's not on the board anywhere else, but, well, he is here. But this part here, I don't get into Broberg's work. But honestly, the addition of Broberg's been huge for St. Louis this season. Then, still at home, they play against Chicago. They win the game 4-1. Scoreless after the first, 2-1 lead for St. Louis after the second. And Nathan Walker had a goal and an assist in that game. So, bottom-ranked team, they get the win. Then they won at home again against Nashville, 4-1. So 4-1 scores against Nashville, popular to this point. They led 2-0 after the first and 2-1 after the second. So very similar game. Robert Thomas had 3 assists in that game against Nashville. Still at home, they beat Montreal 6-1. So Montreal right now is on a high. They come off back-to-back wins against Florida. But not too long before that, they lost the game against St. Louis, and it was lopsided. 2-1 lead for St. Louis after the first and 4-1 lead after the second. Broberg had a goal and 3 assists in that game. So 4-point game for Philip Broberg. Then they go on the road to Nashville. They won that game 3-2, and it felt like that was the one where they were going to lose. Winning 3 games in a period of a couple of weeks against the same team, very difficult. They trailed that one 2-0 after the first. They trailed 2-1 after the second, but they got a couple of goals in the third period, and they won it 3-2. Holloway had 2 goals in that game. Then they go to Denver. They won that game 2-1. It was tied 1-1 after the first and after the second. Robert Thomas had assists on both goals for St. Louis in that 2-1 victory. Then they came home last night. They won 2-1 in overtime against the Detroit Red Wings. It was tied 0-0 after the second period. And Cam Fowler gets the winner at 3:17 of overtime. So 8 of the 10 wins have been regulation wins. That's what gets you into the playoffs. The other 2 being in overtime. They have not needed to go to a shootout during this winning streak. And it could very well continue. So we'll get into the upcoming schedule and I'll talk about this part here. So tomorrow night they're at home against Pittsburgh, the last team that defeated them. Then they're at home against Denver on Saturday, and that's after they won in Colorado not too long back. Then they go on the road to Winnipeg on Monday, And then on Wednesday the 9th, so a week from tonight, they're in Edmonton. Then they're in Seattle on Saturday the 12th. And then they come home to round out the season Tuesday the 15th. Remember, the playoffs start on the 19th, the Saturday. And so what's interesting is there's only one game on St. Louis' schedule from the Saturday before the regular season ends and the start of the playoffs. So they should be well rested going into the playoffs. Now, some key players in the month of March. Robert Thomas had himself a month. 15 games, 3 goals, 17 assists, 20 points. Jordan Kyrou, 15 games, 7 goals, 8 assists, 15 points. Last season, especially early on in the season, there was a lot of complaining about Jordan Kyrou's contract and he wasn't worth it. I have not heard that this season because he's been very good. Dylan Holloway, an absolute revelation for them. 15 games, 8 goals, 11 assists, 19 points in the month of March. So Holloway above a point per game in the month of March, and he's got off to a pretty good start in the month of April as well. So he has been a steal. And it kind of is a steal, right? The twin offer sheets to Broberg and Holloway, absolutely 100% worth it for the St. Louis Blues. Braden Shen, 15 games in the month of March, 5 goals, 7 assists, 12 points. And Butch Navich, 11 games, 3 goals, 4 assists, 7 points for Butch Navich. This is a team that's deep. This is a team that has more than one line that can score. Their defense has been good. Their goaltending's been good too. I don't have Bennington on the board, but I don't really need to put Bennington on the board. I think Four Nations caused a lot of the criticism to kind of drop off with the way that final game went. And since then, he's played quite well. So I don't see any kind of weakness with St. Louis in net. I think their defense is good. And while people can look at this schedule and say, well, that's kind of soft, but you've won 10 games in a row. That is saying something. Other teams would have had a letdown somewhere along the way here. It happens, but not St. Louis. They have had their eye on the prize. Now, one thing that you do have to ask yourself is, so they're playing as well as they are right now, can they keep this up going to the playoffs? Is there a chance they run out of steam? There's a chance, but I'm going to say straight out, I don't think there's a team in the West that's saying we would really like to play St. Louis in the first round. That'd be a fantastic team for us because they're so hard to counter, because they're good defensively, they're good in net, and they can score key goals when they need to. So currently, they have 89 points, a record of 41, 26, and 7 through 76 games played, just the 6 games remaining, right? The Wild have 7 games left. They're 1 point back, a record of 41, 28, and 6. So very similar records between St. Louis and Minnesota, although St. Louis has been skyrocketing, Minnesota's been more meandering. So St. Louis may very well, especially if on Saturday they can beat Colorado in regulation, we might start talking about them breathing down the necks of the Colorado Avalanche, and maybe they end up in a top 3 spot, right? As crazy as that sounds. But what this has done is it's led us to a point where it doesn't feel like there's a lot of tension left now in the Western playoff chase. The Flames, 82 points. They've played 74 games. So they have 2 games in hand. But if they win both, they have 86 points. So the games in hand argument kind of falls away because both Calgary and Vancouver have lost enough games while St. Louis is on this winning streak that, yeah, their chances have really dropped off. The Flames, 74 games, a record of 35, 37, and 12. The Canucks, also 74 games played, almost the same record as the Flames, 34, 27, and 13 record for Vancouver for 81 points. So Vancouver, 7 points back of Minnesota. Calgary, 6 points back of Minnesota. And while they have games in hand on the teams they're chasing, their odds are not great. So for St. Louis, the upcoming schedule, you do have Colorado, you do have Winnipeg, you do have Edmonton, but you have Pittsburgh, Seattle, and Utah outside of that. So I would say at least a 3-3 record from here. 6 points, get them up to 95. Definitely enough to make the playoffs. And I think this is going to be a dangerous team come playoff time. But what do you think? Do you think that the St. Louis Blues are going to be dangerous come playoff time? Yes? No? Maybe so? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below as always. Hit like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. And it will be very interesting to see how this team does from here. Hey, during this channel's existence, St. Louis won a Stanley Cup in 2019, so maybe the channel's a good luck charm. Maybe they win a second one in 6 years. Crazier things have happened. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. As always, don't forget to hit like and subscribe in the event you may not have done so already. Thank you guys so much for all your support as always. I will talk to you again soon.